Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Craig Burrell, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Sergeant Kitson Harcher. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria, and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by visitors to the memorial. If you are able, please stand and join in singing the national anthem. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit in the hearts of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Corporal Louis Herbert Francis Nadin. Louis Nadin was born in 1895, the second son of Louis and Maria Nadin of Sydney. His father's family came from the Canberra district of New South Wales. But Louis grew up in Sydney, where he was educated at the Marrickville Convent School and later the Christian Brothers High School, before going to work as a driver and carter. Louis Nadin enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force within weeks of the outbreak of war in August 1914. He underwent a period of training in Australia before leaving for active service overseas with the 1st Contingent 2 months later as a member of the 1st Battalion. The 1st Battalion arrived in Egypt on the 2nd of December 1915 and continued training in the desert for some months before taking part in the landing at Anzac Cove. Forming parts of the 2nd and 3rd waves, the men landed in the thin morning light and rushed for the heights behind the beach. The battalion quickly became muddled with other units on its flanks, and it would take several days to sort out the confusion. About 2 weeks after the landing, Private Nadin was wounded in action by an enemy bayonet. Although his wound was considered slight, he was sent to hospital to recover. There, he sent a cheery postcard to his father to say that he was suffering from a Turkish vaccination, which was the first his family heard of his wounding. His mother was deeply shocked by the news, but his father was furious that he had not been formally notified long before by the military authorities. Mr. Nadin said, "Surely there has been gross carelessness somewhere, and this is not an isolated case." He went about making the situation as public as he could to try to urge the authorities to fix the situation and get news of wounded men home to their families much sooner. Ironically, Mr. Nadin did not know that in the time between the postcard being sent from hospital overseas and arriving in Australia, Louis had been returned to the front and wounded again. On the 6th of August, his battalion took part in an attack to capture the Turkish trenches at Lone Pine. Unbeknownst to the attacking troops, the Turks had covered the trenches in this area with pine logs, and the Australians were forced to rip them up and climb down into the trenches below to engage with the enemy. After several days of vicious hand-to-hand fighting, the operation was a success, but at great cost. At some point during the fighting, Private Nadin broke his ankle. He was evacuated to hospital in Egypt, where he spent several months recovering. Military authorities, who had taken nearly 3 months to notify the Nadin family of Louis' first wound, sent notification of his second wound just over 2 weeks later. Louis was fit to return to his battalion early in the new year. Louis returned to the battalion that had recently been evacuated from Gallipoli and was undergoing a period of training and reorganisation in Egypt in preparation for fighting in Europe. About a month later, he was sent to France, and within 3 months, he had taken part in the capture of the French village of Pozières. Louis Nadin proved a capable soldier, and by the end of the year had been promoted to corporal. In December, he became eligible for leave to England, returning to his battalion in France just before Christmas 1916. Corporal Nadin returned to the front line during one of the most bitterly cold winters on record. Both sides were forced to endure the conditions, defending their trenches until the weather cleared, enough that they could resume operations in the spring. But although active fighting had slowed, the front line was still an extremely dangerous place to be. On the 4th of January 1917, 2 weeks after Nadin had rejoined his battalion, he was caught in the blast of an exploding shell in a trench near the French village of Gerdecourt. He was badly wounded in the arms and back and was carried to an advanced dressing station. He was hurriedly operated on to amputate both his arms, but he died a few hours after reaching the dressing station. Louis Nadin was buried in the military cemetery at Bernafay Wood, where his remains lie today, under the words, "Sweet Jesus, have mercy on his soul. Rest in peace." He was 21 years old. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, among almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Corporal Louis Herbert Francis Nadin, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozieres or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial, and we wish you all a very good evening.